Thank you, Chair, for giving me the opportunity to speak on Bill C-9 and the sub-amendments by Mr. Brock. Let me begin with the obvious. Hate is harmful, it is corrosive, and has no place in Canada. Anyone who has served in uniform, as I had nearly for 3 decades, has seen the damage it inflicts on families and entire communities. But here's the part that doesn't fit on a podium or a press release. You can't fight hate with slogans. You fight it with clarity, enforceable tools, and legislation that respects both public safety and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And that is where Bill C-9 falls short. Police leadership, the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police, has endorsed this bill. They believe it clarifies thresholds and streamlines prosecutions. That's fine. That's the lane they have chosen, and I think it's misguided. But what does the rank and file say? The men and women actually responding to the calls at 2 in the morning, they're telling a different story. And frankly, those who work the front lines often understand the operational realities far more than those issuing the press releases. Here are the concerns that they raise consistently, privately, and with far more candor than you'll ever hear at a podium. First, they say, we already have the tools, we just don't use them. Officers point to the criminal code, which I've used many times, and it covers intimidation, harassment, threats, mischief, incitement. These laws exist, they work, but they're underused, mainly because leadership is afraid of political blowback. Secondly, their complaint is that definitions in this bill are too fuzzy. Frontline officers know that one misread situation can turn their career into a headline. They don't want that. If the difference between a heated argument and a hate crime rests on vague language, they'll hesitate, and hesitation is the worst operational environment you can create for them. Third, the point to is if the command structure won't support charges under existing laws, why would they support new ones? That is not cynicism, that is their lived experience, and was mine. Removing the Attorney General's sign-off puts everything on us. That's their complaint. Without that oversight, the constable becomes the choke point and the political lightning rod as well. And finally, this bill risks policing feelings instead of conduct. I can tell you from experience, officers are trained to respond to behavior, not interpret emotional or ideological content in the heat of the moment. These concerns matter. They matter because if officers don't feel confident using a law, it won't be used. And if vaguely drafted legislation is used poorly, it becomes a flashpoint that damages community trust for years. Now let's talk about the communities this bill claims to protect, not the ones in the press releases, but the real communities. Faith-based organizations, churches, mosques, gurdwaras, synagogues have raised serious concerns. Many of them fear the law's ambiguity could unintentionally criminalize the wrong conduct or chill religious teaching and cultural expression that has never been and should never be criminal. Civil liberties groups have issued the same warning. The Charter protects freedom of expression, assembly, religion, and conscience. And when legislation uses broad language, those freedoms become vulnerable to selective or uneven enforcement. This is not a theoretical risk. This is Canada in 2025. Communities are more polarized, economic pressures are higher, institutional trust is weaker, and yes, government policies over the last 10 years have exacerbated those divisions. Rising affordability pressures, social fragmentation, and eroding public trust in institutions creates the perfect conditions for resentment, anger, and eventually hate to grow. You cannot legislate away the root causes of hate. You have to address them. We have to address them. And Bill C-9 does nothing to address the root causes. It broadens offenses, removes safeguards, and tests the limits of charter rights, all without fixing the underlying cultural and enforcement gaps inside policing itself. And here's the real-world consequence. If this bill is applied unevenly, if one community feels targeted or another feels ignored, tensions get worse. Trust erodes further, and the very hate we're trying to combat gains more oxygen. That is the danger of poorly drafted law in a fragile environment, which we are living in. And so, yes, we absolutely need to fight hate, but we need to do it with a clear, enforceable laws, proper training, proper resourcing, and the courage to use the existing tools we have. We need to address the social and economic conditions that fuel hate, and we need legislation that does not compromise the freedoms that define this country. Mr. Chair, Canadians deserve safety and freedom, not one at the expense of the other. Bill C-9, as drafted, does not strike that balance. The sub-amendment proposed by Mr. Brock is necessary to correct the severe imbalance of this legislation. The sub-amendments are fundamental to our society and our country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.